My boss used to make up songs about me. Not like a bit, like actual little songs with melody, rhyming words. He made them up on the spot in the middle of the construction site as we walked from one meeting to another. And they were all about how stupid I was, how funny it was that he was stuck with me, and people would laugh. Everyone would laugh. And I would laugh too, because what else are you going to do when the most important person in the room is making a joke about you and everyone around you is laughing? That was my life for a year. But let me back up. A few years ago, a friend recommended me for a job as an in-person interpreter at a construction company. The project manager was from another country and didn't speak the local language well. They needed someone to translate his meetings, his calls, his on-site walkthroughs, his back and forth with vendors and contractors. All day, every day for a single guy. His name, for the sake of the video, was Adam. Canadian, about my age, a little older, running a construction operation in a country that wasn't his, in a language he couldn't fully speak. And I ended up shadowing him for 10, sometimes 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for the next year of my life. The thing about a job like that isn't really the translating. That part I was good at. The thing about a job like that is that you don't have your own life during work hours. You don't have a desk to retreat to. You don't have your own meetings to focus on. You don't have your own anything. You have him. Wherever he goes, you go. Whatever he needs, you need. For 10 to 12 hours, 6 days a week. Which means whoever he is, that's who your whole working life is. And Adam was a complicated guy. I need to be careful with how I describe him because the easy version of this story is that Adam was a monster. And he wasn't, or at least he wasn't just that. He was generous in ways that are hard to compress into one sentence. He gave me things from his house, for example, kitchen stuff he didn't use anymore, just because he thought I could use them. He insisted on paying for lunch most days. And when I got married, he gave me a substantial cash gift. And I mean substantial, the kind of gift you don't forget. He trusted me with his life in ways that in retrospect were strange. He had a pit bull, the kind of dog you fall in love with the second you meet him. And when Adam traveled, he would ask me and my wife to stay at his place to take care of him. His house was the kind of house I'll probably never own. Big, beautiful, and we would stay there sometimes, like we had been led into a life that wasn't ours. He also hosted friends over for grilling, and sometimes I'd be invited. He was a great cook. Those nights were genuinely fun. Outside of work, he was lighter, funnier in a normal way instead of a cruel one. There were stretches where I'd catch myself thinking we were almost friends. And then we'd be back at work the next morning and he would make up another song. Inside the job, he was a different person. The songs were the obvious part, but it was the constant low-grade hum of it that wore me down. The way he'd pat me on the head in front of an entire conference room if I didn't know a word in his field, like I was a slow puppy. The way he'd pull my chair backwards when I was about to sit down, just to watch me almost fall. The way he'd scream at me in public in front of people I needed to take me seriously to actually do my job for things that weren't truly my fault. The way he would make fun of my physical appearance as well. One day, he just kicked me out of his office. I had been working from a desk in there for months, and that day, with no warning, he announced it was time for me to be outside with the rest of my people. Everyone watched me walk out. For the rest of the week, people kept asking me what I had done wrong. I didn't know because I hadn't done anything. He had just decided that day to remind everyone what I was. And here's the part that's hardest to explain. I was good at the job, really good. Within a few weeks, I had the construction vocabulary down. I could interpret simultaneously in real life, in high-pressure meetings, in conditions where people were yelling and equipment was running, and I had a few seconds at most to make sense of what was being said. It's a hard skill. Co-workers would come up to me after meetings to tell me they were impressed. But Adam never did, not once in a year. He knew on some level that he had me, that he was the reason I was in that job. But nobody else in the company had any particular use for me, and so he treated me like he owned me, because in some way in his head he did. I didn't realize at the time what the year was doing to me. I'd get home wrecked, not tired, just mentally hollow, like someone had spent 10 hours scooping things out of me. My patience with my wife slipped, my confidence in stuff I used to be good at started to leak. I'd lie in bed at night and rehearse in my head the meetings happening the next day, trying to anticipate whatever song he was going to invent about me in front of the contractors, trying not to be scared. My wife saw it before I did. She kept telling me I looked burnt out. She was right, but I was making more money than I'd ever made, and we were already falling into debt, so the math of leaving just didn't add up. So I stayed. What I've been trying to figure out years after leaving is what made that year so corrosive. Because there are plenty of bad jobs, plenty of bad bosses, plenty of people who get treated worse than I did. I don't want to overstate what happened. I wasn't hit, I wasn't threatened. I went home every day. By every measure that matters legally or structurally, I guess, what happened was within the range of this is just a hard job. But it wasn't just a hard job, and I think the reason it wasn't is the part that's hardest to explain. It's that Adam was generous and cruel at the same time, that he gave me things and humiliated me with the same hand, that he hosted me at his beautiful house on a Saturday and made up a song about me on Monday. And over time, I stopped being able to tell which one of those was the real him, and I think that's the part that did the damage. More than the songs, more than the chair, more than the office. Because if your boss is just the villain, you can leave him in your mind. You can come home and your wife can tell you he's an asshole and you'll both agree and the world is simple. But if your boss is also kind to you sometimes, your brain has to keep doing math it can't actually solve. It has to weigh the cash gift at your wedding against the head pat in the meeting. And it can't. Those things just don't sit on the same scale. So you end up confused. You end up wondering if you're being too sensitive. You end up half convinced that you are the problem. You end up grateful somehow to the person who is also taking small bites out of you every day. That's what kindness does. From a powerful person, when the kindness has a price tag attached, it doesn't feel like kindness. It feels like a leash you keep apologizing for being on. So what stayed with me from that year, more than any single moment, was a feeling about myself that I hadn't had before. I became someone who didn't fully trust his own perception, someone who assumed, by default, that if he was being treated badly, he probably deserved it. Someone who'd learned that being good at his job didn't earn acknowledgement, so he stopped expecting it from anywhere. Someone who'd learned that even when he had clear evidence of his own competence, the people with power could just decide not to see it, and there wasn't much he could do about that. And you could say to me, hey, welcome to the real world. And I guess that's the reason I'm making this video. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be normalized. And the fact that anybody would have the guts to say, that's just how it goes, welcome to the real world, is the main problem. So I quit, eventually. But only after a year, only after my wife had been watching me dissolve for months. Only because I finally couldn't take another Monday. The day I quit was after a day that he had particularly been nasty to me for something that I never did wrong. So I yelled back, and I could see in his face that he was actually in shock. He was actually surprised at my reaction, because I had never replied to him like that. When I went home that day, I said, this is it. I'm done. And the next day, I went into his office and I told him that I had found another job. And the funny thing is, I was actually surprised that the most difficult person to drop this news to was not him, but HR, the people from my own country that were supposed to be on my side, and they actually treated me like dirt. They got angry that I was switching jobs because apparently I didn't have any loyalty for them, but how could I if they never defended me in any way, shape, or form, even though they were witness to what was happening to me? And even then, what made me leave wasn't dignity, it was just exhaustion. I didn't quit because I had enough of being disrespected. I quit because I'd ran out of the capacity to keep absorbing it. I tell myself sometimes that he did me a favor, that the experience pushed me to try to build something for myself online, to find work that wouldn't ever put me in a room with another Adam. And that was true, in some sense. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't needed desperately to never be that powerless again. So in some technical accounting of my life, I might owe him for the direction I ended up in. I don't know if that makes any of it okay. Right after I quit, I went home and I hugged my wife. And then I cried. Quietly. Not the loud kind of crying, the kind that just spills out of you when you've been holding something for too long and your body finally has permission to let it go. I couldn't have named in that moment what I was crying about. It was all of it at once. There was guilt, real guilt, as I just walked away from what was supposed to be a stable thing, the well-paid thing, the kind of job people in my situation are told not to leave. Not in our economy, not with the debt we had. Some part of me was sure I just made the worst financial decision of my life. There was also relief, the kind you didn't know you needed until your body finally got to feel it. The relief of knowing I wouldn't wake up the next Monday and rehearse in my head the meetings I'd be sitting in, the songs I'd have to laugh at, the next thing he'd decide to do in front of everybody to humiliate me. The part of me that had been bracing for a year finally got to stop bracing. And then, weirdly, there was sadness, because I was never going to see Adam again. And I mean the real Adam, not the one that liked to make fun of me in the conference rooms, the one who cooked for his friends by the pool on Saturdays, the one who gave us things from his house because he thought we'd use them, the one who, in his own strange way, had been thanking me without ever being able to say it. That Adam was part of my life too, and walking out of that office, I was walking out on him at the same time as the one I was running from. And there wasn't a way to keep just the good half, of course. I didn't tell my wife any of that exactly. I just stayed there holding her while my body sorted through all of it at once. And his name came up once recently, a long time after I left. Nothing dramatic, someone I used to work with mentioned him in passing. And the strange thing is, I couldn't tell you what I felt when I heard it. I didn't feel relief, I didn't feel anger, I didn't even feel curiosity about how he was doing. I just kind of felt this quiet, complicated weight, the kind you'd feel if someone said the name of a relative you don't talk about anymore, someone you used to know intensely, someone who was important to you in ways that don't fit on a Christmas card. I think that's the closest I can get to honest about him, and I was glad to be done. I was not glad to be glad about being done though. Some part of me, for a long time after leaving, was still wondering if I should reach out, ask about the dog, see if he was okay. Some part of me is still on some level on a leash that isn't there. That's the part I didn't know was going to follow me out the door, and I don't know what to do with it yet.